Not want to miss a payment. That's the key thing. If you feel that you're going to miss a payment or something has come up, you started working and you find out that all of a sudden you're going to lose employment or change jobs or things like that, what you want to do is call the Department of Education and say, hey, look, I can't make this payment, and work out other arrangements with them. And if you know that you're going to be unemployed or not have income for a long period of time, sign up for a deferment. Or, I'm sorry, if it's called a forbearance. A forbearance is basically your interest is still going to incur, but they're going to put your student loans on hold until you either get a job or until you meet that forbearance period and the time is up. That's usually good. I did a forbearance as well when I kind of did some job transitioning. Now, one of the other things, again, with student loans you don't want to do is default. I tell every student who comes sit at my desk who talks about federal loans is you do not want to default on a federal loan. And default means you stop making payments, you don't make a payment, you quit making payments. Anytime you don't communicate with them, you go into default. And defaulting with the federal loans is like borrowing money from grandma and you never pay it back, knowing she has money that she will give you again and she's not going to give it to you no more because you didn't pay it back. The reason why you don't want to go into default, because I did it, is it messes your credit up. And having a federal loan on your credit is not good. Now, the reason why I defaulted was because mine was medical condition. And I went out of work for a year and a half, and I called them and I told them, hey, I can't do it. I missed a payment. My wife forgot to contact you all. And they were like, and we want our money. So it kind of, messed me up a little bit. But then I don't suggest you default, but they do have what you call a program where you can give back. It's called a recovery program. And you can kind of redeem yourself through that program. You got to make 6 months payments on time and things like that. But we don't even want to go that far. Whatever you do not default on your federal loans. So the key thing is when you borrow the money, again, do not be afraid of the Department of Education because they are your friend. I know you borrow thousands of dollars from them, but do not be afraid of them because I'm 38 years old and I'm paying them back, and I'm only paying them, I think, like I said, $70-something a month. And and that's based off of my income now. Now that don't mean I don't need no money. That's because I got 4 kids at home and a whole wife and cars and trucks and all the yin yang stuff. And they look at that. So but again, $67 off of $24,000, I'll be paying them till I roll over in my grave. But I'm fine. I'm comfortable with that. So, any questions about federal loans?
I have one.
Go for it.
What if you work in public service?
If you work in public service, there are some employment areas that do help you with repayments of your federal loans. Some will go ahead and buy it out, and others will give you incentive to help pay it off. I can't think of any off the top of my mind. I know there's 2. Law enforcement, actually, I believe, does it. Where if you do a program or graduate with a degree in that kind of field, they actually have funding where they help you with paying off your student loans. I think it's law enforcement because I know the state of Ohio does it. So, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
How about nonprofit?
Nonprofit organizations, they are very helpful. They usually more so got geared towards Perkins loans or federal Perkins loans. The Perkins loans, because they have, first of all, Perkins loan is a loan that's university based and it is federal funded, but as you all probably heard through Congress, that federal Perkins no longer exists because that funding was depreciating very quickly, so the government just cuts it off. But most nonprofit organizations, especially the nursing industry, also they will help you pay off your Perkins loans and things like that. Any other questions? Did y'all catch anything from that? Yes, no, talk to me. I'm not really your friend. All right, so, I did that in 15 minutes. Very good. So, my second part of our presentation is life after college and then looking for a job and your salaries. Now, here's the trick question. When you start your employment and you go for that job and they tell you that you're going to make $90,000 a year, do you actually get $90,000 a year? No. Really? No. Y'all sure? Why?
Taxes.
And what else?
Benefits.
And what else?
Like insurance.
Okay. Well, give me some more. Give me some
Social
more.
Security.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Pre-tax, like smart trip benefits.
Yeah, all that. So yes, what if you start your job and if you go for your job and they tell you, well, your salary is $90,000 a year, it sounds good, but when they're going to start, you got to think about your health insurance. You got to think about your
come sit down,
you said,
Robert.
your taxes, your state and federal taxes. You have to think about other deductions, like for example, I was telling them earlier, I pay my car insurance through my payroll deduction, so that I'm losing money off of that. And then you say transportation benefits. All of those things come out of that $90,000 that you're getting per year. So when you're actually, and I kind of laugh every year when I get my W-2. I'm like, well, my salary bill says this, but my W-2 says that, and it's like this big gap in between. But then when I look at all of my deductions and all that I'm paying for, health care and things like that, when you're choosing your health care, this is the key thing. I don't know too much about the HMO and the PPOs. Don't ask me no questions because I can't give you no answers. But I do know that if you're non-sickly, I chose the least expensive because I didn't go to the doctors that often. I went for a yearly checkup and boom, I was done. But I made sure that even though I went for the least expensive, they covered everything. Whereas if I chose the most expensive, they still cover everything. But so I kind of weighed my options, talked to a couple people, and again, I wasn't sickly, I was like whatever. But unfortunately, I found out that one day I came to Georgetown and then boops, I was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. And I had to go home for a whole year and a half, and I'm like, okay, well, what is my health coverage paying for? Because I'm paying the bare minimum, and other people got these high price Blue Cross Blue Shield, and these high big names. My surgery bill was $90,000, but out of pocket, I've only paid $120. So those are things that you kind of want to look at. And again, I chose the very low premium of it all. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry to interrupt. How is that possible? I mean, I know a lot about medical bills, and I've been with Aetna for years.
Couldn't tell you. They showed up at my doorstep for $120. I wrote that check so fast you couldn't catch it.
What was your deductible? When was this?
This was 2012, and my co-pays were $20 at the time, and now it's like $30. But my bill showed up at my door at $120, and I wrote that check real fast. I mean, that was the fastest I ever wrote a check and signed my name, and I stamped it and put it in the mail, and I ain't heard from it since. So right, so but again, those are things you want to look at when you're, and like you said, it's very rare. But I even checked my credit report just to make case I missed a bill. And checking your credit. How many of y'all use Credit Karma? I utilize it. I got the app. And it's very good. It's kind of good. I'm 38 and I got to make sure my credit stays on point. But my medical bills, I checked my credit to see if I missed anything. There's nothing medically showing up on there, things like that. So, those are things you want to look at when you're selecting your health insurance and so forth. So
I can actually second that. I was in a bike accident that took out my teeth and my face, and it was $20,000 in the chart. I paid nothing.
Yeah.
So again, Georgetown Insurance is pretty good.
It's definitely. So you definitely want to look at those things. And I mean, granted, we don't want anything to happen to you all, but when you're selecting, if you know that you have like illnesses in the family that run in the family, you definitely, like diabetes, for example. I'm a diabetic randomly, but then we were talking to my doctor, and he said most people, it's hereditary. So you want to definitely take care, look for coverage that says, hey, you know what, I'm a diabetic, or diabetes run in my family. If some odd reason I get this as I get older, what coverage will it, cover? How much will my co-pays be? Things like that. You definitely want to do your research about health insurance through your employer. The other factor is, and I'm going to speak highly of Georgetown at this, Georgetown pays a good portion of our health care. So that's why you see so many employees at Georgetown, because we all healthy. Because Georgetown put in a lot of money. Am I right? Georgetown puts in, you all are taking care of us healthy wise. That's why your professor's never out. And that's why they try to teach you, look, we had that snowstorm last year, they taught you on through Skype and all the other, because they're healthy. Because Georgetown puts in a great portion to where I'm only putting out a little bit out of my paycheck. So you want to look at that, because I have friends who work in the education department where their they're putting out almost $1,000 a month from their pay to cover their health care, where the education is not, the school boards aren't putting out that much. So you want to look at your deductions of, or the employers when you're selecting your job. How much in benefits are you covering? How much in retirement because I'm vested in my retirement in Georgetown. You all are gonna take care of me when I leave this place. Yes, I see my Mercedes, my S-Class, really nicely. So those are key factors. So y'all getting anything from this? Y'all working? Yeah, okay. So you definitely want to look into those factors when you're looking for employment. Again, that 90,000, that 100,000. Of course, when you graduate from Georgetown, I believe in each and every one of you that you will get that, because I've already told students I want the Chrysler 300. I told students I want my S-Class. Because I'm waiting for you all to give it back to me, because I know that you all can make that money to do so. And then once you do that, you want to just look at your other benefits that comes from that. And then once you're selecting your place to live, we were talking about this earlier, when you graduate and you're looking for a place to live, one of the things you don't want to do is, first of all, graduate and jump and buy a car. Buying a car is blah. If you can walk to where you got to go, walk, bike, do whatever. After graduation, a car is not the first thing you want to invest in. If you're able to, I would invest in a condo or invest in buying a home, something long-lasting. And the reason why I say those are long-lasting compared to buying a car is because I have a car right now, my 2009 white Ford Flex that sits right there behind the library. Don't try to key it, because if you do, I'm going to find you. But my car is a 2009. It has 200,000 miles on it. I owe the bank $10,000. And the value of it, if I wanted to trade it in right now, is only worth $4. Did y'all catch that? So, I can't trade it in because they call it an upside down equity on my car. So, which means if I trade it in, they're going to take that remaining, it's worth $4, so they're going to take that remaining $6, and they're going to tack it onto a new loan with a higher interest. And now my $32,000 car that I want, which is that Lincoln MKZ hybrid, is going to become a $37,000 car because they done tacked it on. But with the interest, it's going to be $40,000. That ain't worth it. I might as well just go leave my car parked outside my house and get a little moped and ride where I need to go. So when you graduate, definitely do not go out here and looking for it. Go tell, I'm a graduate, I'm Georgetown grad, I got this money, I'm going to go buy me a car. No, invest in a home. Invest in giving back to Georgetown. Invest in those things. That way you can see your money, because as it is true, once you buy a vehicle and you drive it off the lot, it depreciates. As soon as that first tire does that rotation, it done lost value. And as soon as you get it off the lot, it done really lost value. And then as soon as you go pick up your friends and y'all go hit the club in the midnight hour, it's done. Because you're going to spill beer in it, and you can't get that out very easy.
I actually second that, because I don't have a car. I've not had a car since I drove it in high school, and I've been working in DC now off and on. I've moved a bit, but 3 years. I went to Georgia for 4 years. I never owned a car. There's a public transit subsidy on Georgetown where it's pre-tax, so I put in my money. It comes out of my paycheck, but I don't have to pay taxes on my Smart Trip cards. And I've always lived close enough to walk to a metro or on bus lines. It can be a pain sometimes, but I even did the math with my Uber and Lyft and public transit, and it's still far lower than a car payment plus insurance. So if you can really try to avoid a car, unless you have to do it for living with a partner or your job is really out there, I'd recommend trying not to have a car.
As long as possible. Yes, sir.
Is riding a bike really safe in DC? I was going to ask.
I was in a bike accident, and I still rode because the metro's that terrible. So, because I had that moment. But actually, in the 2 years I bike commuted every day, I only had one really bad accident. And that was due to mitigating circumstances. I was sick at the time. So, to me, it was safe. You use the trails. There are 2 trails that are mainly used, and bike commuters use them constantly. Georgetown has a pretty strong bike commuter program.
So that's a good question, because I don't ride no bike. If you see me on a bike, you run, because I ain't been on a bike since I was 20-something. I ain't been, let's go back to school, I ain't been on a bike. But that's a good question, because again, one of the things about me is, as some of you know, I live in Baltimore. I know you know, but I live in Baltimore. I'm 2 hours away from Georgetown. And yes, I commute every day. And gas for me is crazy, but I do it because I love you all. And having conversations like this is why I do it, because I want you to not make the decision that I made. It was because of my wife that I moved to Baltimore, but you know, those are expenses that I'm losing on my paycheck because I have to budget. I know that right now it's costing me on an average maybe $6-7. I'm looking at $90 a week in gas right now. So you multiply that by 4, and that doesn't include my weekend extravaganzas. So, you know, having a vehicle comes with a lot of responsibility on top of the $1,500 worth of maintenance I need to do to my car right now because of all these DC streets. Is it worth it, especially out of college? No.
I pay $70 a month using the bus to get to and from work. $70 a month.
Just rub it in. Just
I'm
rub it
trying
in.
to help. So we need to start moving to the housing portion. Is there anything else?
Really quickly, and then I'm gonna get out the door because I have to another engagement. But one of the other things I definitely want to mention to you all is about savings accounts. My grandmother told me years ago, and I was telling them earlier this morning, when you get your first job, whenever you get paid, take 10% of your paycheck and put it in a savings account. No matter what job it is. If you graduate and you go work at McDonald's, take 10% of that money and put it into a savings account and forget about it. Prime example, when I went out on medical leave, my grandmother that was 2012, my aunt took me to Nations Bank, but now it's Bank of America back in I pulled up my statement, it was 1995 that I went to Bank of America now, and I started putting 10% of my paycheck automatically deducted from right over to that account. When I went out on medical leave, of course, disability, you got to wait for all these transactions to come in. I'm at home with 4 kids. I got a house. I have 2 car payments. I got insurance. I got all these things. And my money was running thin very quickly because I didn't know what to do. My savings account was driving me crazy. I just didn't know what to do. And I couldn't focus because I'm being treated. Well, I get this bank statement electronically in my email, and all of a sudden it says, well, this is your statement. And I said, wait a minute. I totally forgot about this account. Doctors told me I was going to be home for 1.5 years on chemotherapy. They tell you now to save for 2-3 months. I had 7 months worth of savings to cover every bill that came through my door from 1995 to 2012 off of just depositing 10% into a savings account. Great investment to pay yourself because you never know what's going to happen. And if nothing never happens, and you worked all your years and you're getting ready to retire, look at all the extra money you have incurred or incurred throughout that period of time. Because now I'm rebuilding that account, and I'm hoping I never get sick again, so I can go buy my Mercedes S-Class. But other than that, do we have any other questions? Did I cover everything? Yes? No? Yeah?
And for salary negotiations, we actually have a workshop next month at the Collie Career Center. It's March 15th, and if you go on our Facebook or our Twitter, you can see the updates of when it exactly will be and where.
So give me 2 points that you all learned so far. Just 2 points.
Use a savings
10%.
account.
Yeah.
Oh, that 10% savings, trust me, it worked.
Don't buy a car.
And I'll take it. Anything about loans?
Don't default.
Job is
I
done.
told y'all my story. I'll be transparent. I'll tell my business every day because it'll help you. All right, you all have a good one. And if you have any questions, just come to the financial aid office, find me, or you can email Melissa and she'll get you in touch with me and we'll go from there, all right?
I'll put my business
All right.
cards on the table.
We'll
All
slide
right,
out.
next up, Samantha, are you presenting?
Yeah, so, I mean, these guys are the pros. I'm not any financial expert whatsoever, but just touching on housing for you all of those students maybe that live off campus, like you've heard this beat to death at this point. But the biggest thing concerning finances is really to, as you're finding a house and you're renting, I mean, if you're buying a condo, it's a whole different thing. But if you're renting, really make sure that you read the lease cover to cover before you get into any sort of financial bind, because a lease is a legally binding document, and it's going to hold you to those things. So that's the biggest thing. No matter where you go in this country, out of country, you're going to have some sort of document to sign. Make sure that you read the lease thoroughly so that you know what you're obligated to do, your rights and your responsibilities. I'm not going to make it particular to Georgetown because some of you are leaving Georgetown. But for those of you that haven't and live on campus right now and you're moving off campus, you'll hear plenty from our office, and you can use this as a resource if you have questions about that sort of thing and even finding housing. Like, please come talk to us. And then pertaining to finances, the biggest piece of advice that we see from everyone off campus and from our own personal experience is just make sure that you do a walkthrough of your property before you either sign a lease or once you sign the lease, recording all of the damages and everything that you see in the house, because you don't want to be taken advantage of once that lease is over in terms of your security deposit, because it's different every state you go to, but like for DC, you can't put more than a month's worth of your rent at, like a landlord can't ask for more than a month's rent of your security deposit. But we see a lot of people like that don't get that back in the end, and that's often a lot of money. So just make sure that you are protecting yourself and safeguarding yourself by documenting everything that's in that property that you're potentially going to rent. Is that cool? All right. If you have more questions about moving off campus or beyond that, we can have separate conversations. But yeah, I'm Sam and I work here.
And I wanted to add a few things. So in my experience, actually renting after college, I was doing a walkthrough and I realized there was no fire extinguisher in the kitchen. And I'm like, do I have to pay for that? So I asked them, like, oh yes, we'll fix that right away. So they're responsible for those things: fire alarms, fire extinguishers. Some of the items in the apartment, like the George Foreman has supplied us with, the microwave, weren't working, and that's not your responsibility as long as it's not in your lease to. They lived in a kind of group apartment complex living thing. So don't pay for things you don't have to pay for. And your landlord's there for a reason, you're paying them for a reason, get them to fix work. So if they refuse to fix the toilet or like the shower's been leaking for days, that's their responsibility. And if there are places they can reach out if their landlords are not being compliant.
Absolutely. I mean, especially in DC, as we always say, DC is a very tenant-friendly city, and it is. It depends on what city you're going to live in and move to, but quite often there are agencies, city agencies, that are built in to protect you and either give free legal advice or have inspections. Like here in DC, we have DCRA, and they'll come in and do an inspection of your property, but they will hold your landlord accountable financially, and it works differently everywhere, but there are measures in place that you're not just completely out of luck.
So wait, is the DCRA before you move into the apartment or like whatever you're renting, or is it like at any point?
It's at any point in time, but there are also certain, so like in DC, every single rental property has to have a basic, which basically means that your property is up to minimum safety and health standards as judged by the city. So that's one thing that DCRI will go in and regulate. They will do an inspection and then they'll issue you a basic business license to say like, hey, this property is up to standard. And yeah.
So then who pays for the inspection?
It's not, it's free, it's completely free, but whoever will pay, like, so like what would happen is DC would inspect your property, DCRA, and then they would say these 10 things under these categories need to be changed or fixed, and that would go directly to your landlord, and depending on what it is, they assign certain financial amounts to each of the things, and if they don't fix it, then that's up to them. So it's free, in DC at least.
I'm also going to be passing around, this example is actually my real life bills from last year when I lived in a group house with my friends, and I changed the names. And it's just like how to divide all the utilities and rent and internet. It actually is really helpful to have it all spelled out, and I'd recommend doing this because you don't want to have the three of them argument like, well, I didn't pay rent, like you didn't pay rent last month. It's like, well, I paid the gas, and just, it gets really messy, guys. So I think I'm just going to show how it can really easily be split out and pass that around and avoid those kind of issues. Also wanted to talk about like avoiding scams and risks on like Craigslist or things like that. If you want to talk about it, I can talk about that.
You can talk about it.
So when I was more of apartment hunting, I went on Craigslist for a bit to see, and there are legitimate places on Craigslist and people renting out and subletting. However, if it says, here's a $50 application fee you have to pay online, you might want to avoid that. Those are usually scams. Or if they ask for your credit card information, that is a scam. So usually what will happen is that you do a walkthrough, and I would recommend asking are there any businesses on this property? Because I learned from when I was going to rent from, they run a daycare on the weekdays. Surprise. So those kind of things you really need to ask about, and ask, is anybody else moving out soon? Because you may like your roommates and neighbors now, but when someone else moves in a month and they're up till 3 a.m. partying, that can change things. So you really want to be as conscientious as possible. I know it's kind of rushing if your lease is ending in a month and you're like, oh, I found the perfect place minus construction zone next door. No. Try to save yourself as much time. The trick is, though, is that Craigslist, often people post right when they learn their roommate's leaving, and they're like, oh, I'm leaving in a month, goodbye. It's a pretty quick turnaround sometimes, especially in DC. So I just got to keep your eye on it, but do be aware that there are the scams, and be sure to ask all the questions when you're doing your walkthrough, and make sure that it's legal what they're doing, because if it's not, that could be problematic. Any questions about housing or anything involving that?
Yeah, when you said like legal what they're doing, I feel like I've seen a lot of postings that like don't actually seem like a person could be living there. It's like a den room or something. Like, is there a way to know, like is it public information, like how many people can legally live on that lease, or like how could I look that up?
If it's in a private home, that'd be more difficult. But if it's a large apartment building, I've seen people renting out their sunrooms.
Yeah, I've like seen a lot of stuff like that. Yeah.
I think we probably saw the same person. They keep posting repeatedly. You could call the building and be like, "Hi," like, and you'd be like, "How many people can legally live in this building?" You don't have to give any names. There's no reason to do that. It's also in the leases, so you can ask to see like, if I had my partner and I living there and our child, like kind of throw out scenarios. But the reason I'm risking against it, because if they get in trouble, you're out. That's not good.
Yeah.
So, or if it just seems really sketchy, or if they're like, I'm gonna be on vacation for 2 months but may come back, like, you don't want a precarious living situation. So, any other questions? Okay, so we can move on to budgeting now if we're good. So I'll be doing that part. So I'm actually going to use the slide here. And I can also email this to anyone who wants. I have my business cards here you can take.
If you want to move around too and you're uncomfortable, I know we're in a super tight.
Yeah, if you guys want to switch around.
Is that the sign up?
The sign up sheet should be.
It's right there.
So I use mint.com for my budgeting because it links to my credit card, so I can see what I spend what on. And it's like, that's a lot of Starbucks. You can see that and it shames you, which is good. So some people use their own personal Google Sheets.
What was it?
Mint.com, like mint, like the flavor. There are, of course, tons of them online, and I prefer to use Mint because you can rearrange it so it automatically deducts and adds things. So it's like my income plus my side jobs plus whatever minus all the lists of things you see there, which is housing, food, laundry, transportation. As Edric mentioned, save 10% of your income. Even if it's not an official savings account, just mentally take that away or keep that in your budget sheet. I think a really important thing to talk about is unexpected expenses, because they really do hit, and they hit hard. So there's a recent article in the Washington Post that I think it was over 50% of Americans could not afford a $400 random expense. It would just like wipe out their savings. It's really difficult, and you want to have some sort of savings to protect yourself from if your laptop dies and you need that to do job hunting and whatnot, or for work. I had to actually, for my apartment, put in shelves because it was, after I realized for a while in the room I had, there was no space because it's 9x6 and that's a bed and no space, so I needed shelves. And that took out, with the installation, even a friend did it, to $200 in like supplies, put up shelves. So that's really important too. So I really recommend tracking these things on Mint, and it doesn't help with cash because unfortunately it only links to digital items. So you can either budget cash in a different thing or try to avoid using cash as much as possible. Oops. Oh. So reducing expenses, this is more for right now in order to prepare for having a bigger nest when you leave. But if you don't know this already, the library has a lot of the textbooks, especially if you're in the languages or English or any kind of like novels, because I think almost all of my French and German classes, I had all of the textbooks and all the novels because the teachers bought them originally and then put them in the library. And that was extremely helpful. You can buy older and cheaper editions if your professor allows it. Usually you can get away with that in the humanities. If you're in science or math, I would ask first because the problem sets may have changed. Transportation, so there is a discount for students for Capital Bike Share. And as a staff member, I also got a discount for Capital Bike Share. So it only cost me, I believe, it was $80 or $90 for an entire year of Capital Bike Share. No, that's what it would have cost me. I think it cost me only like $35 for an entire year of Capital Bike Share, which is cheaper than buying a bike and having to fix it many times, which I did. And it ended up being way more than I paid for it. The Metro and the circulator buses are fairly cheap. As I mentioned, I only pay $70 a month in getting to work and back. There are various carpool and slugline websites if you work a little bit further outside the city but still work in DC. So the slugline is where they're in Springfield and it pisses it a little farther out. You have these parking lots where people who don't have cars gather, people with cars gather, and two people come in. So it's safe because there's two strangers and then the driving person, so there's this equilibrium. And they drive you into the city and drop you off. So there are websites dedicated to this. There are certain lots. Gus Bus, obvious, that's free. Let's see what else. Traveling. So I'm not sure if you know of Student Universe, but I used that to book my study abroads, which was extremely helpful. So I think I saved at least $200, $300 each time. Megabus, they have one, I think, that goes from DC to New York. That's pretty cheap, especially for your job interviews if you want to save money on that. Compare travel rates. You know the trick where you have to clear your history, clear your cache, otherwise it, increases the amount you'll have to spend. So this is just more for fun things if you're going to stay in DC. We also have this in our, if you can look for the budgeting guide at some point, we have that in there. Just some free opportunities they have in DC. I think the one that a lot of people miss out is all the Smithsonian's are free. Like I didn't really think that when I arrived in DC when we were staying in Georgetown. So I would really check all those out.
And the zoo is
Oh yeah, anything related, I think is it under Smithsonian Zoo? I think it's under that. Yeah. A lot of places like Safeway and CVS will have membership cards. It can be frustrating to do it first and put in your number every time, but at this point it's impossible to go to a grocery store without having to use some kind of membership card, but it really does cut down the expenses. And of course, things like food trucks, and always look for student discounts or ask. I don't know if it's still there. When I was a student here, there was this app or email listserv with all the free food on campus each week. Is that still going on? If not, they should get that back going because that was great. So that's the last on that slide. I also wanted to just say in general, it's better to buy, I know it can be more expensive, buying quality things once rather than cheap things multiple times. This goes for shoes, this goes for mattresses, this goes for anything you use daily. I know it seems expensive at first, but honestly, buying the quality thing first is really that much better if you can afford it or save up for it. I'm trying to think what else. Also, back to the insurance, because I know we're jumping a bit. Make sure you're in network when you go somewhere for an emergency. For my dental emergency, I had to get a double root canal and tooth replacement. And I went to someone outside of my network because emergency, I literally could not function. And only by saving grace of discussing this with my insurance network, I was able to get it covered. But they were going to charge me $7,000 out of pocket, and I had to sign a waiver at first before they touched my teeth saying I'd pay $7,000 in cash. So really go in network, and when you're choosing your plan, make sure those doctors near you, because people will choose a plan and think, oh, the closest doctor's in Brockville, Maryland. And, you really need to look at where the doctors are, and if you need dental and need eye care, make sure that you're making a decision not based on money, but based on your health, because you really can't buy your health back. So.
Adding on that, I had a really bad experience where I had appendicitis, but I wasn't sure because I hadn't been diagnosed yet, but I was in a lot of pain. But in my college, LaSalle kind of way, I refused to go to the ER until I found out whether they were in network or not. And so I went through all this trouble putting myself in harm's way and confirmed it before going in, but I never knew that a surgical practice could be out of network. Hospital is in network, so be aware of that. I never knew that, so I was really upset because I ended up having to pay $20,000 for agreeing to a surgery that I agreed to while I was under pain meds. I didn't know what was happening, and I was under the impression that everything would be covered in network, but it wasn't. So be aware of that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate they make you I had to sign my waiver when I had losing my teeth, my face was bleeding, I was in immense pain, and they had me sign the waiver saying here's $7,000 cash. It's not pretty. Yes?
Wait, on that note, like, if you have an emergency and an ambulance, like, takes you somewhere, how can you be sure that they're gonna take you somewhere, like, in network?
Usually ERs are covered differently.
Oh, okay.
Versus like getting a surgery, even if it's considered an emergency because it was an appendectomy, there was extra complications because that practice joined in network of my insurance after my surgery. So at first they were like, oh yeah, it must be a mistake, you are covered, but then they got back to me and they were like, you weren't covered when you had your surgery, so yeah, you have to pay for everything. And I was really upset.
Also, ambulance is really important. They're not free. Like, I think it's this weird conception growing up that they are. Like, at least when you're a kid, you're like, oh, the ambulance just comes. They can be up to anywhere from a couple hundred to a couple $1,000s. And if someone's not covered, but they're passed out or you're concerned, it's a difficult decision. I've had to actually make that once where, like, do I call the ambulance for this person I don't know? Because I don't know if they're covered. I'm going to cost them thousands of dollars.
Actually, that's only if, I don't know, we were both EMTs.
Okay,
and
yeah.
It depends on the location and the service that gets called, but for us, if we didn't take you to the hospital, we don't charge you for coming on
Okay.
scene. So we would have unfortunate things where a person's obviously in need of hospital care, but they would refuse to because you can tell it's due to money reasons. And sometimes if it's severe enough, we wait until they pass out and then we take them to the hospital because like their life matters more than their money problems.
Yeah, it's if they don't use any, at least when I was, like, this was in North Carolina, if they don't use any, like medications, any, yeah, so like if you're called in for an alcohol intoxication and, like, you think that the person is not like too, like, far gone that they could actually like, recover, then there's no cost associated with it, even if ambulance is called. But if they're like so far gone and you need to like put an IV in or like put some like do things to them, that's when even before the transportation occurs, like that's when you still get charged.
Any questions regarding it?
For ambulances, what about homeless people? They don't have to pay for it, right? Because I know sometimes when I'm out on the streets, homeless people have me call ambulances for them. And I mean, when the ambulance gets there, like, I just leave. But who's responsible for that payment?
So they end up being in debt, but they would call I'm guessing. So that's why sometimes hospitals don't, because they know in the end they'll be paying for it, if that makes sense.
I thought the state or the government would cover those situations. It's not.
I think certain situations the local government will pay for that,
But
depending
it
on
comes
your.
from a fund, as far as I know. It might differ from state to state.
Yeah, I think it has to be covered because you don't have the money to pay for it if you don't have a job. So the local government will have to take care of it.
Any other questions about anything we covered?
Yeah, I have a question. When you said to clear your history about like looking for like Expedia or something, what did you mean by that?
So a lot of those websites, if you visit them often enough, they'll increase the prices because they notice you're looking at, like, let's say I'm planning a trip to, I don't know, New York, and I'm looking at this for months and months and months. It'll know that and it'll up the prices on some websites. So if you clear your history, it's as if you never visited them, so the prices will reset themselves.
Or using incognito mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, just clearing your cache once in a while will probably help a lot of your computer problems as a former IT person. Yep.
Let's say you could like put away, let's say 30% of your income, your take-home pay. Like, how should you? Maybe this isn't the right place for this question, but how should you invest that 20%? Should you just keep it in the savings? Should you put it all in your 401k if you have one?
So I can answer some of that. First of all, we had an investing investing workshop that is online in our YouTube channel. So if you go to our Facebook or YouTube channel, look us up, you'll find that. Secondly, so for example, Georgetown, am I allowed to say how much? I don't know. Okay, so if I give 3%, they add like 9% or 10% back? I just want you to clarify that. It's a significant portion. It's a significant portion of giving back to me. So I give everything that I can up to my maximum percentage given.
Yeah.
And I don't include that in my 10% savings.
Got it.
For investing, like I said, the investing workshop, I think if you can save it, save it. As for what accounts, like I said, I can't tell you that, but I do not include my 401k in the investing part.
Talk about like retirement plans, like, or maybe this is not the right place. But like,
I can't answer that, but I wonder if our benefits office could discuss it, or...
Well, what is your question about?
like where do I even start?
Well, you have to, once you find a job, your employer should have part of that as your benefits. Most employers should be offering you a retirement plan. Depending on where you are, it's a 401k or 403b, so you have to take full advantage of what they will be offering you in terms of matching. So if you can afford it, go for the highest, and they will match it to the highest level, because you have to start investing for retirement really early. They said at least by age 25.
Yeah.
Because if you want to live your current lifestyle now and retire, you have to make 10 times your current salary. From when you're in your 40s, for example. So by the time you retire, you have 10 times the amount that you are making to be able to live the kind of life you want. And most people don't have that right now. So they want you to start really early, like they say 25. You can go, if you have extra cash, you can do it by yourself. You can invest in a mutual fund if you like doing that. Some people like doing that, where they can look at stocks. So you have a lot of options, but definitely look into your employer's plan and try to maximize that benefit.
And I'm no financial money wizard person, and I still had to pick my plan from the 3 offered, and I just asked advice from all the people my age in the office, as well as some of them older, and they always kind of directed me toward the same one. So I went with that, and it's been good. I didn't see any huge differences between the ones offered that were significantly, I don't know, even though Georgetown longer. But like I said, didn't do any of those money matters, and I still just picked one. I'm working with it now. It's fine.
Okay. And then there's a follow-up question. Sorry, if you want to go first. So how does that? So an employer-based retirement plan versus like an IRA or Roth IRA, how do those differ? And so it's like the IRA. Sorry. Yes.
I think if you invest in a Roth IRA, you will be putting your own money in.
Okay.
So there's no matching.
Okay.
So it's basically if you put in $100 a month, that's it.
Okay.
If you're enrolled in your employer's plan, they would match whatever. $100 will be $500, for example, depending where you are.
Okay.
So that's the benefit of availing your employer's retirement.
And you can do both, correct?
Yes, you can, definitely, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, so like my question was, what if you know you're gonna be in school for a while, like medical school or whatever, and you're carrying debt on like like you just have it's like negative. So what advice do you have?
So you're going to graduate school, or you're in graduate school already?
Right.
And are you also working at the same time, or you're just going full time?
Full time.
Well, I'm sure you have scholarships, teaching assistantships, some loans. Do you have that?
So we don't get to do teaching assistantships because it's a 1-year master's program.
Okay.
But like on top of that, like medical school as well. And I don't think there's a TA, right?
I think it depends, because if we do SMP or we go to Georgetown, we can TA for some of the classes Monday.
So I'm sorry, what is your question?
Well, it's just like, what are like ways to provide for retirement in the future, or like for Think in general, if you know that you're probably going to be in more debt by the time you finish school, or like you're not going to have like a sustainable income for a while.
Well, you're in graduate school, or wherever that's an investment on yourself, because you know that once you're done, you will be able to get a good job, a high-paying job. That's why you're in graduate school. You're pursuing a higher degree to help you get a job that will help pay your bills or whatever you want to do with your future. So while you're in graduate school full time, it's very difficult to be thinking about retirement if you have rent to pay, books, food. So you can try to save as much as you can, but you would put that in a savings account first for an emergency. And then once you have a job, a real job, then that's when you have to think about retirement. Because you have to take care of your basic needs first before you can actually set aside, save, or, savings is very important, but the retirement will be probably secondary to that.
So I will still
Yes, I'm sorry.
left to right then, Elysius. Yep.
Oh, but just on that note, wouldn't it be, if you're looking at loans, wouldn't it be better if you don't use up all your loan money to get it back rather than accrue all that interest on those loans?
That's a good question. Maybe Edward would have been a good.
For me, I had a pretty high interest loan from Sally Mae that I think it was 9%. And when I had my first paychecks, I just took that one down, but I did not do that to my other ones, even though I could.
In graduate school,
Oh, graduate school,
if you have loans and you find that you didn't use all the money that you had expected to.
I wouldn't pay them off right away, and here's why. Because that random emergency that could happen, I would rather have the money for that. Unless the interest rate is killing you, which I don't know if it's federal, private, unless the interest rate is legitimately destroying you, I would not take away savings, a nest for an emergency. That 2 to 3 months could really save you from having to go into bankruptcy.
Credit card or,
Yeah. I think there was one over. Yeah.
Oh, so I think there was a workshop on how to do your taxes. I think I
Yes.
missed it.
We have them all online, and I have the PowerPoint as well.
Oh, okay.
So if you want to just take my business card, I can email you that. So it's on our YouTube channel. I think it's what GU Commons says.
Yes.
And just email you for the PowerPoint. If there's any international students here, we also did international taxes workshop, and I can give you that information as well. And there's also, you guys also call you a taxa? Okay, email me about that too,
Okay.
and I can get you in contact with someone that can try and help you with that.
Because I did my taxes 1 year in college.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot how I did it.
Yeah, we can help you out with that. Just email me. My cards are right here if you have any questions. And also, we have the presentation up. We will have it soon from this year. Last year's, I believe, is up too. And just email me for that. Yes.
So I'm looking at apartments, and a lot of them require a minimum income.
Interesting. Samantha, this might be more of your thing.
Sorry, you said they require a minimum income?
And I don't meet that minimum income. So I work for the federal government, and they're just not paying what the minimum income is.
Gotcha. That's something that, every apartment complex is going to be different, whoever the management there. Have you talked to them about it? Because there are, legitimate places where you can't. If that's...
I think some places would also ask you for a cosigner if you don't meet the minimum income. So it could be a parent or a relative. So that's a guarantee that if you're not able to pay the rent, for example, then someone else will have to be responsible for paying it.
And their
So
credit
that's
matters too. If I had to have my sister do a cosign for my Sally Mae loan because my parents weren't able to do so due to credit. So you have to also make sure that the person you're co-signing is able to pass that, otherwise you'll have another problem in your hands. Anybody else?
How do you not get stressed out by all of this?
Okay.
As an adult, what are some coping?
Here's the thing. If you have questions, 90% of this is online. Not even kidding. If you Google help, how do I taxes, or my landlord won't fix this, there's help. There are the free, like you mentioned, the free walk. There's a lot of things that the resources are there. Honestly, looking at your money can be scary. Look at your bank account like this again, but you have to do it. And the money I had friends that avoided phone calls from the student loans, and that was the worst thing they ever did because their credit was shot and they couldn't get an apartment. So you just have to do it. And the benefits are great. I like my apartment, I like my job, I worked hard to get there. I can go on the metro to see my friends because I picked an apartment close enough to the metro, which cost more, but was worth it. So I don't have a car, I don't have to look for parking,
paying for parking on Georgetown campus as a staff member is just unfun. So you have to make the hard decisions and make the hard phone calls, but in the end, like, a lot of the resources are there, and it will be okay. You just have to make the hard decisions.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.